got a new format we're trying out tonight. Let's
Impossible. Switch.
Up slowly. How's everybody doing tonight? It's your boy, Radically Moderate. What camera we want to go? If this one's a good one, yes. Hey, yo. Ooh, can we get a background on here? Let's put a background on here. Make a duplicate of this. Duplicate. Yes, we do production live. Let's see, capture, image, moderate wallpaper. And we'll just knock this down a few places. Yeah, that doesn't look weird at all. How that, you got the turntable visible there on the left side. Let's crop that off a little bit more. Hey, look at that. Bam. It's a production here. I'm walking around. We're gonna see how that changes the vibe of the energy of the show. Salty Cracker. I need a standing desk, man. Salty Cracker has one. I need to get one too. Let's. Oh man. Kitties. Kitties this way. Okay. Well, I'm live right now. All right, so we're not going to 4chan. This one, Larry Fink. Larry Fink. Oh ho ho ho! Good old Larry Fink. So this is a pretty good one. Center monitor. Center monitor of camera. I'm going to adjust the crop. No, crop is fine. All right. Where do we even start here? We got so many segments. We got so many topics to cover tonight. This show, no guarantees on quality. We're just going to jump right in here. Hey everybody, Radically Moderate back once again. We got two articles I want to talk about tonight on NPR and Information Liberation. First, why some of the country's top CEOs fear a recession is coming. You want to do? We won't listen to this. It's not just Cardi B chief. What? Executive of the top country. What? Cardi B. It's not just Cardi B. Chief executives of some of the top companies are also really worried about the economy. I'm worried about the economy. Elon Musk is. JP Morgan. Inflation's the highest it's ever been in 40 years. The Fed is in the middle of a delicate dance that could end up in a big economic pain. Wow, that's a nice way to phrase it here. All right, let's just jump into this interview. We got Larry Fink here. He's doing the meme hands, acting out like he's... No comment. Anyways, let's hear his interview.
The market has recalibrated itself. We witnessed now a change in policy in the Federal Reserve. We raised short rates. We saw a recalibration of growth stocks. That's principally the majority of the downfall. And yet, the index are masking some of the problems because part of the index are energy companies, commodity companies that are up quite a bit. So if you look at the volatility in the market and the spread between winners and losers, it's pretty broad this year. And so we've taken out a lot of those gains that we saw during the COVID years. And
what gains were there during the COVID years? How could we have any gains during the COVID years? All small businesses shut down, printing money. Any gains were purely just paper gains.
changing our lives, and we were emphasizing different companies, and now we're seeing the reverse impact of that. So that was one of the foundations of it. But now there's greater recognition that inflation is not transitory. It is probably with us for a number of years.
Oh my God.
And it's a type of inflation that I don't believe the Federal Reserve has the policy or the tools to do much with it right now. And I'm
The only thing the Fed can do is crash economies or create inflation.
personally not blaming the Federal Reserve for where we are right now, but I believe most of the problems we're living with today are more policy generated and supply generated. Demand right now in our economy is equivalent to the demand that we saw pre-COVID. And so we're witnessing all these supply shocks.
Because demand will always be there. People will always need the same amount of food, bread, butter, cars, tires, basic parts to live. We have 330 million people in this country. So you got to provide food for 330 million people at least. And toiletries and stuff like that. This is supposed to be like, is he trying to create an argument for demand side economy? Everybody knows that supply side economy is where you should be looking at.
And that's creating these attended price increases. And so it's more supply driven. It's been aggravated now, obviously, by COVID and lockdowns.
Yeah, if we don't,
of the world.
If you shut down massive amounts of small businesses, the supply will shorten. And when the supply dries up, the demand's the same. Supply. Hold on. All right, guys. All right. We're cracking it out. We're going to write to it. All right, everybody. We finally have the whiteboard up and running. We're going to start doing this now. Next time somebody makes me mad with math, I'm just going to bust up the whiteboard. So, guys, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, here is, we're going to put some curves here. This is going to be supply. This is demand. More like this is prices. As the supply increases for something, and if your demand is like a fixed, constant level, we're going to color this red. Red is demand. Demand remain constant, supply. So when you have low supply, high demand, regular demand, high prices. Before COVID, we had a lot of supply, or even maybe moderate supply, so prices were whatever. But now we have no supply, the chip shortage, you've heard about, and high prices. I hope you guys like this presentation stuff.
We are manufacturing goods. It is being further aggravated by the Ukraine-Russian war, and where we have supply shocks. But I have this fundamental view that much of the inflation has been generated by some very large policy shifts in the United States.
And I want to talk about exactly what caused it, but just before that, we have Jamie Dimon talking about a hurricane, potentially. Are you saying something that significant? What's the chance of recession? And not so much this year, but in 2023 or even 2024?
Well, I think Jamie said one outcome could be a hurricane. It may not be that. So I know that sounds so perfect for the media, a hurricane, but I could see scenarios where it could be quite bad. Another downward draft of significance. A
recession.
Be dependent on earnings going forward. But I could also see a scenario where we're going to be muddling along for the next year or two, right around this level, and maybe up 5%,
what's this level?
Down 10%. But we're going to be in this range-bound area until we have better information. I mean, the one thing I will say with total certainty, we're going to be living with more uncertainty, and so with that in mind,
markets hate uncertainty, so markets are going to be crashing.
We are going to have bouts of fear, which is going to bring down the markets, and a little more confidence going on forward. But we have not witnessed huge asset allocation changes by our investors.
Well, I was going to ask about that. What are you seeing in your funds, for example? Are people buying bonds again, for example, in your funds?
Oh my gosh! In the month.
Why would you buy bonds?
We had the biggest increase in ETF bond purchases. I mean, we had $30-something billion of inflows in bonds, whether it was credit or all that. So you were certainly seeing a revaluation of how far interest rates need to go upward. And so that's also one of the big trends. I mean, I would say 30 days ago, many people were calling for a deep recession, and now people are mitigating that. Obviously, there are views that we could have a deep recession or a hurricane, but that's just one of the outcomes. I mean, I think there's higher probabilities of outcomes that we're going to be more range bound with a lot of volatility.
Certainly, there's uncertainty about exactly what happens with the Fed. Maybe not so much on rate increases as what the consequences will be of the quantitative tightening, which actually started this week. What are those consequences likely to be in your judgment?
You better find new buyers. I think the marketplace does not understand the dependency of low rates was on the QE purchases, the trillions of dollars at the Federal Reserve. But let's all be clear: between Japan and China, they own, close to $2.5 trillion of U.S. Treasuries too. So there are big owners and big players, and obviously, what will be the future clearing price rates with less QE and now a reversal? Do we need to get up to a 3% 10-year to meet a lot more demand? And so much of this is we're all going to have to see what are the consequences. If the demand that we saw in intermediate treasuries in May carry on, QE may
5 minutes and 50 seconds is the clip we're looking for.
Not be the reversal of QE is not going to be as big of a problem. If we have that fear that inflation is going to be longer and higher, then obviously we're going to have to reset all that, and we're going to probably have higher rates. But I'm of belief that we don't have to have much higher intermediate and long rates.
For our global television, radio, and YouTube audiences, this is a simulcast with, of course, Larry Fink. He's the chairman and CEO of BlackRock. Let's go back to something you raised, Larry, and that is inflation. Not just what it is, but what has caused it. Because we've been told in the past,
what's caused inflation?
Chair Powell, that he's got the tools he needs to take care of it. Right now, the data don't necessarily indicate that he's taking care of it yet. Do we have the tools?
Well, first of all, I'm a strong believer in Chair Powell and the Federal Reserve doing the right thing. I have great confidence.
Wait, what do you mean? There's nothing the Federal Reserve can do that is the right thing besides abolish itself.
In his abilities to assess the market. So he may know a lot more than I do, so I'm not going to be judging him. I believe the problems of inflation are not Fed-related as much as policy-related. So I believe inflation is really based on some big macro policy changes.
Wrong. He is lying to you. He's lying to us. He's lying to the American people. Inflation only happens in one place, the printing press, in Washington, D.C. There is no other place that inflation happens. Our politicians, our government causes inflation. You can't blame it on macroeconomic trends. This is utter BS.
That are now, that had good intentions, but the unintended consequences are more inflationary. For instance, post-World War II, America's foundation of economic policy was based on consumerism. We built this entire economy post-World War II with a belief that if more Americans can have more things, then we have happy Americans, and we built a whole geopolitical platform around that.
Turns out people having things was a mistake. Americans are going to have less things going forward. Is that where you're fucking going?
And then with the fall of the Soviet Union and we had the peace dividend, we were able to accelerate globalization and building things. And that's one of the fundamental reasons why we had deflationary pressures for the last 30 years, that whole movement towards supply chain navigation and lower prices.
What is that, supply chain navigation?
Say 10 years ago, the rise, whether you call it nationalism or the rise of this belief that we have to focus on communities that have been devastated by globalization. We need to find ways of creating better jobs for more Americans. That in the rise of this belief
is he saying here? Hold on.
And lower prices. I would say 10 years ago, the rise, whether you call it nationalism or the rise of this belief that we have to focus on communities that have been devastated by globalization. We need to find ways of creating better jobs for more Americans. That in itself is inflationary when you move away from the cheapest price ever to another area. And so that's a fundamental.
No. That is not inflationary. Inflation only happens by the printing of money. Can we pull up a chart here really quickly? Pull up the M2 money supply. Boop, 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 boop. Boop, boop. The money supply. M2 money supply. Yes. Guys, look at our supply of money over the last 5 years. Starting back in, March of 2020. Look what happened to our money supply. Let's look at it over 10 years. I wonder why inflation's happening, considering since 2010 we've almost doubled the amount of money in supply.
Change. We change our immigration policies, and I'm talking about legal immigration, okay? Our legal immigrations, that was changed about 5 years ago, where we reduced the amount of legal immigration.
What?
If you look at the
When?
rate of increase of...
Apparently I missed when we turned down the spigot from 1 million a year to something less. What?
Legal immigrants in the United States from 2000 to 2017, and the rate that we are growing immigration in the last 5 years, we're down 2 million. 2 million new entrants to the United States legally. Right. That is very inflationary when we have full...
No, it's not. That is the most BS thing I've ever heard in my life. Because there's 2 million less people in the United States. Actually, that's causing apartments to go down. And if we had 2 million more people in here, imagine how much more expensive housing would be, how much more expensive food prices would be. This guy's upset that he's not making more money off of the prices of food and rent. This son of a...
Full employment when we have these jobs. Think about all the need for workers. What does that mean when we start implementing our infrastructure bill, when it's going to take up quite a few new jobs? Where are those employees going to be coming from? It's going to create rising wages. And if you look at
rising wages doesn't create inflation. Only money supply does.
Earnings, many companies are saying rising wages are a part of their degradation of their margins.
And maybe to add to that, we're also going
Degradation of companies' margin doesn't cause inflation.
Through an energy transformation globally,
Totally.
And that can't be free.
And
we're in it. What? Whoa! Look at the smirk on this SOB's face when he says that it can't be free. There's a smirk. Look on his right side of his face, left side of his face here. Okay, look for it.
Energy transformation globally,
Totally.
And that can't be free.
Right there. Look at that. He's smirking. He's laughing at us. Poor people are going to have to suffer the price of increased gasoline.
And I've said in my letters that energy transition can be highly inflationary. And I've always said that an energy transition must be fair and just. And we can't be just mitigating supply. We need to be finding solutions. So we have a strong view.
All they can think of mitigating is supply. Just less oil, less oil, less oil. Mitigating supply. Back to this. Guys, all they can think about is, can you still hear me? All they can think about is just doing this. They want to mitigate supply. And this is like oil supply. If your oil supply goes down, price of oil is going to go up.
View on that if we don't find a way to be working with the hydrocarbon companies, with the energy companies, making sure that we have adequate global supply of hydrocarbons at the same time, move technology to create a more decarbonization platform and pathway, and it's not going to be a straight line. It's going to be lumpy like what we're seeing now. That is also inflationary. And let's be clear, the $7 trillion.
Lumpy is another way of saying the poor and middle class getting raked over the coals, man.
$7 trillion of fiscal stimulus.
Hold on. Look at how much arm movement he's doing right here. He's really acting. He's passionate about
making
this.
Sure that we have adequate global supply of hydrocarbons at the same time, move technology to create a more decarbonization platform and pathway, and it's not going to be a straight line. It's going to be lumpy like what we're seeing now. So that is also inflationary.
Everything is inflationary except the friggin' money supply and the Federal Reserve, according to this jack.
And let's be clear, the $7 trillion, I want to underscore, $7 trillion of fiscal stimulus during the COVID years is beyond any stimulus we've ever seen in fiscal policy in our history of a country. So you add all those things up.
That's the only thing you should be mentioning is the $7 trillion in stimulus. That's where all the inflation came from. It's that simple. Everything else is a lie to you because he thinks you're stupid.
It was a foundation of inflation, and then
he hates you.
You overlay the Russian-Ukraine war and the supply shocks, and then you overlay now COVID and the lockdowns and what it's doing for supply chains. All of that is adding on. So getting back to the Federal Reserve and your question, the Federal Reserve does not have tools to fix supply problems.
Turns out the stream was private until now.
Like every other central bank is to reduce demand through higher interest rates. As I said, I don't think we have a demand problem. We have a supply problem.
As we go back to my chart, as you can see, demand will always be pretty much constant. If anything, demand slightly going up over time as the population grows. But our supply is really what's causing our price fluctuations.
And so if they believe they have to change demand, that will put us into a recession. And I believe we need more time. So I'm under the belief we're going to have a 2-year period of time of elevated inflation. But I do believe as we reconstruct our supply chains, as we find better sources of energy in the interim, as we create more decarbonization technology, all of this in 3 or 4 years is going to work itself out. And when you talk to the energy complex today, they believe fair value for gas, for oil is about $70 to $80 a barrel. Right. And so we've seen this before. We're in this transition, and I do believe within a few years we'll be back to $70 to $80 oil.
Given all of that,
yeah. Hold on. If we have 2 years of 10% inflation a month, how the hell are you supposed to have $80 a barrel? Because after a year, the barrel's almost doubled in value. I don't know, guys. I'm just an idiot here with no economics degree, and I'm asking all these questions.
Is it realistic to have a 2% target on inflation? Or are we actually encouraging the Fed, in a sense, to do something that will drive us into recession? Because given there are fundamental factors that push that number above 2%, should we be really rethinking? And what does that mean for investors if we're looking at a 4% inflation world?
Well, I think we are living in a 4% or higher inflation world.
Or higher. Bro, the inflation rate's 10%. What are you talking about?
For the next 2 years, investors are going to have to look beyond this period. The question is, what will happen in 3 or 4 years? Is this going to be a short-term pop? I mean, you even heard one of the governors yesterday talk about, we need to raise rates a few more times, and then I can see in a year we're going to lower rates. Okay, and so in my opinion, we need to get to a 2% level, just to level set. and let the data determine where it is. But I do believe, because this is supply generated and policy generated, not as much monetary policy generated, it's hard for them. If they overshoot, we'll definitely get into a recession, and then they're going to have to ease very quickly, and we still may have the supply problems. And in all the conversations I have with business leaders around the world, and I've had a couple meetings in the last 2 days with some significant CEOs of major international companies, and they're all talking about the supply problems, and they're also talking about the need of labor, and they're all seeing this problem, and it's a real big issue.
One other thing that you've been outspoken on, and that's environmental, social, and governance, ESG investing.
ESG, is that causing inflation? Yes.
Vogue. At the same time, now it's getting a little bit of tarnish on it. For example, on some of the greenwashing allegations that we saw, certainly with the DWS, but also the SEC going at it. What do you make of greenwashing, and what should be done about that as a problem?
Well, I could tell you what we've done. We've always believed this could be data dependent, and so we've been very aggressive in building out analytics and data so we could look at and review and judge companies through the lens of better understanding of how companies move forward in a decarbonizing world. We overlay satellite imaging and technology to understand how physical climate risk can impact an asset, a piece of real estate, an office building, a factory. And so
why do they allow billionaires to buy beachfront properties then?
Move forward without a proper taxonomy.
Why do loans guarantee beachfront property if we have to worry about climate change, for example?
I do believe the SEC has to be focused on that. But importantly, let's be clear, clients in Europe are actually more aggressive on moving towards sustainability, not less. Europe right now today, they have the existential problem of Russian dependency of gas and oil, and they're moving away from that. Europe actually said we're going from 2050 to be net zero to 2035. And so in actuality, they're accelerating their decarbonization
35.
process. At the same time,
that's like 13 years.
Change their taxonomy. A year ago, their taxonomy said gas was brown. Magically now, because of the problem, gas is green. And David, I've always said the energy transition is not brown to green. It's going to be from dark brown to medium brown, the medium light brown, the light brown, and on and on and on. We may develop new technology to leapfrog a couple of those shades, but I can't see that technology yet. But let's be clear, to do this transition, and the problem is some environmentalists are saying, Larry, we don't have time to do that.
Right.
And there lies the debate. Do we have time to go from dark brown to medium brown to light brown?
No, we don't. We need to crash the economy now.
Have the time to allow that.
I don't care how many millions of people have to die. We must protect the earth
that we're living in today.
And what's the best way into this problem? Is it through government regulations?
Yes.
These standards, or is it through things like shareholder initiatives? I mean, you said you're not going to back it.
The only thing that works is government regulation.
We're going to the proxy season.
More government. More.
So we're almost done with proxy season. In fact, in the U.S., we're done. We still have a few more in Japan. What we said, we're not going to be as prescriptive as last year. We're almost at the same level we were last year. I think the biggest change in proxy season this year, more and more.
I don't know what he's talking about anymore. All right, we're going to end this segment here. If you guys like this type of content, leave a like down below, subscribe, share with your friends. We're radically moderate out of here. Holler. Where do we go from here? I got so many articles and comments to talk about tonight. Where do we even begin? Oh my God. Mitch McConnell is a bitch. North Carolina's school skirt requirements for girls unconstitutional. North Carolina's charter school skirt requirement for girls unconstitutional. Court rules. In North Carolina, charter school requirement that girls wear skirts based on the view that they are fragile vessels deserving of gentle treatment by boys is unconstitutional, a federal appeals court ruled Tuesday. The Fourth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, on a 10-6, ruled that the charter day school violated 3 female students' equal protection rights by adopting a skirts policy based on gender stereotypes about the proper place for girls in society. Is nothing sacred anymore. The school implemented a dress code that its founder, businessman Baker Mitchell, in an email and testimony said would preserve chivalry and ensure schools were treated courteously and more gently than boys. The state-funded school in Brunswick County argued that equal protection clause of the U.S. Constitution did not apply to it because it was a private entity and not a state actor. But U.S. Circuit Court Judge Barbara Milano-Keenan said that since it was delegated, since North Carolina delegated it so and its duty to provide free universal education to students. A contrary ruling that would mean North Carolina could not extort blatant discrimination, she said. I don't exactly understand how that works. Thought it was a charter school. Is it a private school or not? Is it a government school or not? The Richmond, Virginia-based court allowed the students to pursue a Title IX claim, prohibits sex discrimination on federally funded education, so it's not a private school. The ruling is a victory for North Carolina students. Well, there you go, guys. The 6 dissenting voices were all racist, rapist, Republican judges. If you guys like this type of content, leave a like down below, subscribe, share with your friends, holler. An anti-abortion protester was arrested while scaling Oklahoma skyscraper. What a nut. Police arrested an anti-abortion activist on Tuesday after they say he scaled the tallest building in Oklahoma. Mason Deschamps, who calls himself pro-life Spider-Man. What? You know what? Everyone's got to have their niche. Posted a video on his Instagram story Tuesday morning as he hung onto the 50-story Devon Tower in Oklahoma City. The gathering. No helicopter yet, though, he said as he panned the camera down towards the ground, showing what appeared to be a fire truck responding to the scene. He encouraged viewers to donate to Let Them Live, and an anti-abortion charity donates to people seeking an abortion. I gotta say, if this guy's pro-life, his activities of climbing a tower... is he free climbing? Is he free climbing? Is he free climbing? Is this him? I'm Spider-Man.
That for a reason. It was just a communication between guys on the ground, guys in the building, and guys on
40 this morning when we received a call from the Devon Tower.
Oh my God, can you believe someone climbed a building? This is terrorism.
Outside of the building.
Our crews arrived
Literal
on the scene.
terrorism.
The gentleman was about at the 10th floor, so that was just beyond the reach of our tallest ladder, which is 100 foot.
I was shooting videos here in the park yesterday. That's where I met him. He's like, bro, you better come here. Tomorrow something crazy is about to happen. I'm Spider-Man, and they call me like that for a reason.
It was just a communication between guys on the ground, guys in the building, and guys on top trying to tell him the safest route to go.
Losers.
He climbed all the way up to the building, to the top where we were able to take him into custody, and he is going to be transported to the Oklahoma County Detention Center for trespassing
Oh, you guys suck.
and disorderly conduct.
We're so thankful that everyone is safe and
What's safe? You guys probably made it more unsafe, if anything. I guarantee that you guys probably contributed to the risk of him falling. I have no respect for police anymore, especially whoever this woman is.
incident is over.
He was
This
very
Gretchen
respectful. He was
Mixter
following
won't wanna
directions
be.
all the way to the top, trying to, obey orders the best he could.
He told me that he's done similar things before. So, like, he never
Oh
mentioned.
my God! Look at this guy's witness statement. Look at these 1, 2, 3, 4 camera crews. Utter vultures, man. I have utter despise for news media. I wish they'd all quit their jobs. Friggin' demons. If you guys like this content, leave a like down below, subscribe, share with your friends. Radically Moderate here. All right, we got another news article from MSN.com here. Story at a glance. What's the headline? Most Hispanics believe more physical representation would boost Latino numbers in STEM. False. The study found that a majority of Latinos feel that United science careers are potentially unwelcoming towards Hispanics. As someone who is currently a minority in a university, how I am the minority, and these people who are the majority feel somehow discriminated against? I'm sorry. How? This sounds like utter malarkey. Latino workers remain underrepresented in STEM. What about black workers? Well, Latinos make up 17% of the workforce, only 8% in STEM. What about all the other percentages? Yeah, Asians are what, overrepresented? What the hell? Well, white workers make up 63% of the workforce. They make up 62% of STEM workers. Asians make up 6% of the total workforce, but they count for 13% of STEM. What the fuck? Asians, what the fuck? Asians are racist. How is this possible? Why are Asians overrepresented? And I'm just confused here. So what do we do? What about blacks? Blacks aren't even mentioned anywhere on here at all. Fucking racist. In order to get these numbers to match up, are we gonna have to like knock off 4 points from the white workers and add those 4 points on the Latinos, and that gets us what to 5 percentage points shorts, and then if we take 5 from the Asians, we can get Asian percentage down to 7%, and finally get the parity up to Hispanics. Is that what it has to do? We have to discriminate against whites and Asians in order for Hispanics to be at parity, because who cares? Every rainbow has to be exactly the same. 20% white, 20% white, 20% Hispanic, 20% Black African. It's every 1/5 of every group. Oh, hi there, baby. Hi. Oh, she wanted to be picked up, you guys. You see that? She wanted to be picked up. Aw. Okay, we'll try to do a news story with her. I'll try to do a news story with her. I can do this. All right, we got a story of racism here from Legal Insurrection. Washington State Supreme Court imposes different standards on police seizures for BIPOC and whites. 2 identical factual circumstances of police encounter maybe result in different judicial results depending upon whether they were BIPOC or non-BIPOC, i.e. white. This is a good example of how social justice and critical race theory verbiage and language accelerated by BLM protests in 2020 have penetrated the judiciary. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. Washington State Supreme Court issued an opinion announcing that whether a person is deemed seized by police must take into account the race of a person if the person is Black, Indigenous, or a person of color, BIPOC. BIPOC status, the court ruled on June 9th, 2020, is relevant to whether the person was free to leave, to request, to refuse request, or to otherwise terminate the encounter. 2 factual circumstances of a police encounter may be result of different judicial results depending on whether the person is BIPOC or non-BIPOC. BIPOC is a term used a dozen times in the opinion, but BIPOC is poorly defined and a broad term that puts otherwise disparate groups into racial categories. It also is a term that can have absurd results, such as Elizabeth Warren arguably qualifying as BIPOC since she claimed to be Native American and was treated at the Harvard Law School as a woman of color. BIPOC as a term also conflates important distinctions among various groups to experience with police stops and perception of policing and police reform. It is also that reason that many anti-racist activists and academics object to the term BIPOC, viewing it as erasing the unique experience of Black Americans. Well, also, what about mixed race people? Where do they fit into the, were you half black or you half white? Do you have white privilege? Do you have black privilege? BIPOC is a recent term that became common with the protests and riots of 2020. While the New York Times found a 2013 reference to the term, Google search trends charts show a surge of the term in 2020. That's also my lived experience, with Cornell University, where I work, now commonly using the term, which applied to a rock climbing class. Cornell alone is not alone. BIPOC is a hot word on campuses and among activists. The case before the Washington Supreme Court involved a person named Paula Sum, who was identified as BIPOC. It's supposed to be Black, Indigenous, person of color, so because it fits with the Pacific Islander in there too. Black, Indigenous, Pacific Islander, person of color. It was approached by police in a high crime area while sleeping in a car, sleeping with a friend in a car. What? The police asked Sum for identification. He provided a false name and birth date, and then took off in a car. Well, that's not very good to do. You shouldn't lie to the police. Just say, I don't want to name myself. I don't want to name myself. You don't lie to them, though. That's dumb. When the policeman returned to the police to check the information, his conviction for fleeing the scene is not disputed, but his only conviction for providing false information to police. I mean, I think you should be able to lie to the police so the police can lie to you. I think that's only fair. I seriously think it's only fair. If they want to criminalize lying, it should apply to the fucking police. If the false information was provided pursuant to a unlawful seizure, the information is not admissible as evidence. The issue before the court was whether asking for identification in this circumstance was a seizure, such that police needed a warrant or to prove an exception to the warrant exemption. The court made clear at multiple points in the opinion that it was deciding the case under Washington State Constitution, which said that it contained broader protection of the Fourth Amendment than the U.S. Constitution. The court held that this seizure and rated that Sum was being BIPOC was necessary to consideration. The court did not need to issue a sweeping declaration as to BIPOC status, but chose that this case is set on a marker. Here's the introductory summary of the opinion. Let's see here. We'll read the bold parts. As the parties correctly agree, the answer is yes. Our precedent has always required that the seizure inquiry be made in light of the totality of the circumstances, and we have never stated that the race or ethnicity cannot be relevant circumstances. However, we have not explicitly held that interactions with law enforcement, race and ethnicity, we do so today. Are you biting me? You just bite me? Fine, go away then. For the purposes of the analysis, an objective observer is aware that implicit institutional unconscious biasness. Oh, shut up. If you can't use this in the court of law, the implicit bias test has never been used in the court of law, so why are you referencing it? All of these cannot be proven. These are all just BS words. In addition to the purposeful discrimination, have resulted in disproportionate police contacts, investigation, seizure. Well, because the justice system keeps on cracking down hardly on BIPOCs, we're gonna say this one BIPOC gets off free, even though he lied to the police about his name. The court also made this point at various times in the opinion. We hold as a matter of independent state law that race and ethnicity are relevant to the question of whether a person was seized by law enforcement. Oh, yes. So, listen, if police violate your rights, were you white? Doesn't matter anymore. As a result, the relevant race and ethnicity in the seizure inquiry cannot turn on whether there was a recent well-publicized discrimination and violent law enforcement What? For generations, Black and brown parents have given their children the talk. Oh my God! Shut up. This is so cringe. Instructing them to never run down the street. Always keep your hands where they can be seen. Yeah, white people do the same thing too. Look at this racism, thinking that white people never have to worry about scary police interactions. God forbid you have to crawl down a hotel hallway with your pants falling down, with armed guns pointed at you, police of guns pointed at you. Do not even think of talking back to a stranger, all out of fear of an officer with a gun will react to them. Simply put, a person's ethnicity does not become relevant with media reports of police discrimination, nor does it become irrelevant in the temporary absence of such report. In sum, while it is true that there is no uniform life experience or perspective shared by all people of color, heightened police scrutiny of the BIPOC community is certainly common enough to establish that race and ethnicity have at least some relevance to the question of whether a person was seized. That is absolutely disgusting. This is a problem for policing because police need to determine BIPOC status at the time of the encounter. Oh my God. So it's like, oh, if the person's white, we can break into their house. If they're black, you can't. Police are trying to figure out how to treat a person based on racial factors of the court imposed. Spokane County Sheriff whatever said he was briefed on the decision Thursday, and his deputies have been advised on the upcoming training bulletin. They have new procedures on how to let BIPOCs get away with crimes that otherwise white people would be charged with. If you guys like this type of content, leave a like down below, subscribe, share with your friends. MSNBC equates banning kids from drag shows to ending LGBTQ people. On Tuesday, Dateline, White House on MSNBC. Nicole Wallace once again proved that she will distort reality and twist facts to further her left-wing political agenda. This indisputable fact was on display when she gathered a panel of miscreants to discuss the trouble incident on the weekend where 30 men linked to white supremacist group Patriot Front were arrested and attempted to disrupt the Pride Month event.
He writes this: last month, a fundamentalist Idaho pastor told his small Boise congregation that gay, lesbian, and transgender people should be executed by the government. Another fundamentalist pastor in Texas gave similar
"This is disgusting"
sermons. Representative Heather Scott, an Idaho Republican lawmaker, recently told an audience that drag queens and other LGBTQ supporters are waging, quote, a war of perversion against our children, and
where's the lie?
Quote. And last week, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis said he would consider sending Child Protective Services to investigate parents who take their kids to drag shows. Jonathan Capehart, this isn't just one-off. This is an alternative reality. What was Kellyanne Conway's thing? Alternate facts. This is an alternate universe of hate.
What are you talking about? There's child drag shows going on, and he said that anyone who brings their kids to them are going to get CPS. What's the controversial fact there? Are you defending bringing children to strip shows? They're not strip shows. They're pride events. They're celebrating pride.
Of intolerance, of violence, asking the government to execute them. I mean,
yeah, legally. You guys talk about all the time how, hey, Donald Trump committed treason, and we all know the penalty for treason is death. Well, maybe some people think that transgendered people are committing treason against children.
This is beyond flashing red. What do we do?
How do we take care of these stupid, bigoted Republicans? If we could do something about them. Arrgh.
talking about this. We have to do what Frank did and call out those elected officials, those public officials who are engaging in the rhetoric.
This guy's a pedophile. He's got to be a pedophile. Look at him.
And signing the legislation that targets the LGBTQ community. And on top of that,
you say, man, we want to keep pedophiles out of school, and these people say, this is an attack on the LGBT community. It's like, whoa, why are you pinning pedophiles with the LGBTQ community?
AP report. You know, I want to go back to the Southern Poverty Law Center poll that was released last week.
You can't reference them. They're not credible.
And part of that report, which was focused on the, quote, Great Replacement conspiracy.
That Democrats celebrate, and they talk about the browning of America, and demographics are destiny.
In the wake of blacks being targeted by a white nationalist in Buffalo, it also makes the point that the attacks on gender identity and the LGBTQ community
are the same,
are also having an impact. And
there it is, you guys. There it is. Utter insanity. In news stories I thought we wouldn't have to cover, here we are. NBC News. TikTok star claims ranch wouldn't let her ride their horses because of her weight. Well, yeah, they're trying to prevent. Let's try this one more time. NBC News. TikTok star claims ranch wouldn't let her ride their horses because of her weight. Ranch claims that CPS was looking at them the whole time. Or not, Animal Protector Services were over there ready to arrest them if they let her on a horse. NBC News reports that Remy Bader has 2 million followers on TikTok, but they thought they'd give her a message slightly more exposure by featuring on a network which claimed a whopping 3 million viewers. We're slowly coming to grips with the job title, social media influencer, but there's something we have to get used to. A fat lady not allowed to ride horse isn't national news, but it is when the fat lady's Bader, NBC News, Remy Bader, TikTok star, known for her realistic clothing haul videos, claimed that during a recent trip with other influencers, a ranch wouldn't allow her to ride their horse due to her weight. Yeah, they cared about the horse's welfare. There's a weight limit. You can't put an elephant on top of a horse. Our reaction to the story is supposed to be what? Good? Firefighter rushed toward the story. In her initial TikTok post on Saturday, Bader shared a video of the ranch with the text over saying, "Shout out to Deep Hollow Ranch in Mantuk for making me leave because I weigh over 240. Here's the question. Did they make guys over 240 leave too? Oh, they did. Oh, it's not just you. It turns out it's their weight. The video has over 1.5 million views, so the caption reads, "I've rode horses before and I've never had this issue." It sounds like those previous ranches need to be looked at for animal abuse. She asked them if they're going to advertise on their signs in the future. Deep Ranch did not immediately respond because they're deeply fatphobic. Why would they? This is a rule everywhere for the horse's health and safety. Why would anyone risk hoarding horses? So, the weight limit here is 225. I checked 3 different places for upcoming family event. So why indeed is this a story? Yes, and save the horse, ride an exercise bike. Oh, damn. Selfish person not allowed to harm animals, but is actually the victim. Ooh, Razor, you're brutal. Correct decision. This is why my brother breeds large donkeys for hunters' weekend excursions. We must protect their animals. Equestrian here. You're not a horse. That's kind of weird. I don't know how much he weighs, but I am not here to shame her, but it is generally not recommended that a horse carry a rider who weighs more than 20% of the horse's weight, i.e. a 1,000-pound horse, 200 pounds. A 1,200-pound horse, 240 pounds. Especially true for older horses. Damn, and 1,200 pounds is a lot for a horse to weigh. With almost no info, I'm going to hazard and guess that this was a smaller, older horse with pre-existing back issues. Not to discourage people from riding, but we don't know about that. This guy, you should just shut up, okay? It was a smaller, older horse. You don't know that. This isn't fat phobic. It's literally normal protocol to protect horses. My husband is a cattleman cowboy who's worked on dude-style ranches. They always keep stockier horses available for heavy-set people, but they're darned tootin' that someone who's just too heavy to even for the horses. Good for the ranches to keep the animal welfare over dollars. I'm not even sure why this is considered national news. Because fat lady's fat. Yo, what's up, Tony Tran? Fat mads are fat. I've always seen rate restrictions with horse riding. Why does she want to hoard a horse? Because she's evil. They're evil people. Roller coasters have height limits. Bridges have weight limits. Horses aren't made of steel. Why is this news? Why is this news? Tiny violin. Ben Shapiro says, oh no. Do not saddle the horse of your problems. Rein it in. You shouldn't stir up trouble. Okay, Ben. Okay. All right, if you guys like this type of content, leave a like down below. Subscribe, share with your friends. Did you guys hear that? Leaked internal messages show how Twitter employees debate on whether to ban us, Libs of TikTok. Conservative Twitter accounts are dropping like flies. Just today, Ali Stuckey was locked out of her account for hateful conduct. Her crime, she criticized Fox News for celebrating child gender transition. There was nothing hateful about her tweet. She wasn't harassing anyone. She certainly didn't call for violence. She merely dissented. You're not allowed to dissent anymore, but that's all it takes. Project Veritas recently exposed Twitter's bias undercover video of employees admitting they censor conservatives. We really need a hidden camera footage. Their bias is blatant. It takes effort not to see it. We've experienced our share of it firsthand. It started in April when we got 2 back-to-back suspensions. Following those suspensions, the left was emboldened. Knowing I wanted to remain anonymous, they went on a mission to expose me in the hopes of intimidating me to silence. This culminated of me being doxxed by Taylor Lorenz at Washington Post. Instagram got me on the censorship wagon as well. They mistakenly disabled our account and reinstated it after realizing the error. Linktree suspended us. True. I received a third suspension just last week after posting flyers of the Pride events. I created a mega drag thread which documented the sharp rise in drag events for kids. It's a disturbing trend. The left has become obsessed with ensuring that your 4-year-old has access to men dressed as women while dancing provocatively for cash. The fact that I was noticing and drawing attention to how widespread this trend really is seemed to trigger the left. Big accounts on the left started calling for my suspension, labeling me domestic tourist. Below, the Slack conversation between Twitter employees occurred today. Against this backdrop, echoes some charges leveled against us by far less activists. It was shared with with us by Twitter employee who wishes to remain anonymous. We verified the names, images of employees before we obscured them. Feels more likely that Libs of TikTok will get verified badge off this platform than a perm ban. Happy Pride. Libs of TikTok is going to get somebody killed. Act Lib is advertising drag queen stores specifically for preschoolers. The library is funded primarily by local property taxes. Twitter equivalent of it's the Twitter equivalent of I'm not touching you, I'm not touching you. T. This has been escalating for months for what it's worth. But our expectations out of Twitter are so low right now that the devil himself is having to squat to get to the level. Ugh. I don't get how this account, which exists solely to generate targeted violence at marginalized people, continues to be allowed to post. No, that's your. See, this is the bias right here, which exists solely to generate targeted violence. No. They're raising awareness to societal problems. Just because it's a problem that you don't think is a problem doesn't mean they're creating targeted violence. If I say, hey guys, so X issue is a giant problem, I'm not creating targeted violence against people who are X issue. Sorry, I had a cat on my keyboard. Oh, hi Kiki. She's a good kitty. But if we deplatform this account, we might erode the trust in our platform from users who already think we're irredeemably biased against conservatives. Ghostface. I mean, we successfully deplatformed Trump. I don't think deplatforming Libs of TikTok is going to cause a mass exodus, but I guess it may not be in our fiduciary interest to exact a ban on a high-profile account right now. Trans people are being targeted for genocidal violence during Pride Month. Like I said, our expectations are given so low that when James Damore came out on his transphobic, misogynic Twitter gave him a verified badge and let him go by fired by truth. He wasn't fired by truth. He was fired by being transphobic, misogynistic. I apologize. I was not speaking from my own perspective, but applying commentary on how leadership has behaved recently. I could have phrased that better, and I'll be more cautious in the future. I despise and despair the activity that is currently flourishing on our platform and empowering white supremacists and fascists to act with impunity. Bro, look at yourselves right now. The pedophiles are acting with impunity right now. And harmful emotional and physical violence on the trans folks and the broader LGBT community. Nods, gotcha. Thanks for clarifying. There are a few tweeps involved in this exchange. As you can see, they're weighing the pros and cons of banning us. One of them is expressing concerns that the ban will validate the charge of Twitter's bias against conservatives. The reference to Trump successfully deplatforming is interesting. He was permanently banned for incitement to violence. The same charge left hopes that will stick to us. The concern is then raised about fiduciary duties. But an ultra-work tweet fires back. How dare you bring up fiduciary duties while trans people are being literally wiped off the face of this earth? Bro, listen. If we go back 10,000 years, there's not a lot of trans. Yeah, there's more of them now than there ever was. I can't. Historically speaking, I'm talking about history right now. Minorities didn't do so well. That's all I can say for fear of not getting. And there was reasons for that. How dare you bring up fiduciary duties when trans people are literally being wiped off the face of this earth? Like a good little ally, the rebuked tweep apologizes and promises to do better in the future. Perhaps most remarkably is how they parrot the same lines we hear from far-left activists. There is no debate about whether we're actually terrorists bent on exterminating LGBT community. In their view, it's just a given. They believe they're right along with the extremist activists that we solely generate targeted violence against marginalized people. The only thing that they're willing to debate is what should be done with us. They Do they take us out now for engaging in targeted general violence, or wait for a more opportune time? But again, you don't need leaked messages to know how biased and agenda-driven these people are. The messages only confirm what we've always seen with our own eyes every day. And that's Libs of TikTok on Substack. Check them out, you guys. All right, I'm going to end this live stream now. If you guys like this type of content, leave a like down below. Subscribe, share with your friends. Radically Moderate out of here. Holler, bye.